I'd like to call this meeting of the Willits City Council of October 23rd to order, and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilmember Kanne.
Yes.
Rodriguez. Present. Strong. Mayor Stransky.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Here. All right. Public communication. Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same subject matter, the mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of City Council, Commission, boards, agencies will not be prohibited, but no action shall be taken. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? You want to step over the podium and state your name to the record?
My name is Mark Herbert. I'd like to address the last thing that you said in relation to community comment, and that is that no action will be taken. I find that reprehensible. We are the people, and we abdicate our responsibility to governments to you. So I will address my constituents as well as the council. Number one, I'm concerned with the fire station taxation and the subsequent sale of the home that's next to the fire station. I've noticed that the fence is down. I'm wondering if there's any action being taken on that building, and I know that many people, including myself, were not aware of the fact that that home had to be moved and preserved prior to building a firehouse. And I'd also like to ask the council why it has not been considered to put the fire station out on a clover leaf to have greater access to save lives, because minutes save lives. And my second question has to do with what you're addressing this evening, and that's fiscal responsibility. The Roots of Motive Power and the Willits Horsemen's Association have a long-term use of city-owned property, and I'd like to know, I think the city of Willits, the people would, should know what that monetization for the city of Willits is annually, and being aware of that cost outlay for the bleachers in the Horsemen's Association as a result of one section being damaged by a branch of a tree in the Red Grove Park at a cost of well over $340,000, subsequently indirectly contributing to a rise in insurance payments for the city of what's projected to be 45%. And I'd like to know who actually made that decision to spend so much money on a project so few citizens use, and obviously the Horsemen's Association's largesse in using this large parcel. My third question has to do, and I am greatly in favor and the need for law enforcement. I spoke with the chief numerous times on this topic, but I was in court yesterday with someone, and unfortunately we have an officer whose testimony has been restricted by the district attorney. My question is, the individual that I went to court with is now being asked to attend a hearing at a later date with a jury trial that's set, and yet the officer who arrested him can't testify, meaning the charges are null and void, and yet 40 or 50 people are going to be called to jury duty and give up their day's wages for a case that can't proceed. And I just find that, again, a fiscal irresponsibility. The fourth item I'd like to talk about are bicycles on the sidewalks, and they continue to present a hazard after bike lanes have been established with no reprisal or enforcement of the city code that I'm aware of. And I've addressed this with the previous police chief, and you in fact refused to enforce that ordinance in spite of my repeated requests to do so. Number 5, and I addressed this the last time that I was here, with Confederate militia flags flown during and through the 4th of July celebrations, which I brought to your attention last time I was in this chamber, I'd like a guarantee that these displays of racism will never be a part of any celebration in this community again. And again, I'd like to address the fact that no action will be taken, and yet we abrogate our responsibilities for governance to you. I would hope that the city would consider these things that I've listed and address them. Thank you for your time. And everything here tonight is fiscal. So considering the cost of those properties down there, the largest properties, City's not going to be able to annex the property behind Holly to put a subdivision in, but we do own those properties down there, where we can put in substantial amounts of public housing at low cost. Thank you for your time, thanks for your representation.
All right. Would anybody else from the public like to speak? And I will explain the reason that we don't take action when folks come up and talk, whether you want to talk about what the previous speaker spoke about or the color of the walls. If it wasn't on the agenda, by law, we can't discuss it tonight, and that's why. So that we don't get into a banter with somebody. Sometimes we may have a question that we may say, hey, yeah, we have a question, but we're not really having discussion, and sometimes the city attorney will counsel us on, hey, you're drifting from just a quick question into a discussion, and so we get reminded of that, city manager, city attorney, and so we have to kind of bring it back. So I kind of want to explain that for folks in the audience and out there in the TV land.
Chairman, if I might add too, that the community, aside from standing at the podium, you can always email or drop off mail to us so that any one of us can follow up on any concern that a citizen might have.
Thank you very much.
All right. Public matters, I see none. Enactment of ordinances, I see none. Consent calendar. We have council minutes of September 25th, 2019, October 9th, 2019. And then we have item B, authorize city manager to execute and approve construction change orders. And for the Watershed slip out project. Item C is resolution to amend the fiscal year 2018-19 adopted budget, recognize revenue from County Mendocino in the amount of $67,158.04 for the landfill. Item D is resolution authorizing city manager to transfer $247,868 from the sales tax transportation fund, 202 to the gas tax fund, 201 to cover shortage and street maintenance costs occurred in the gas tax fund during fiscal year 2018-19. So do I have a
I would like to pull B and D.
B and D?
I would like to pull C.
Okay,
Looks like we
all
only
right.
have the minutes.
I guess we just have the minutes. Madge?
I don't want to, I did give a few little typographic corrections to Kathy already, so with those minor things, I would move approval of the consent calendar item A.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Greta, any further discussion? Anybody from the public? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we're up to item B. Authorize the city manager to execute and approve construction change orders. So,
We have Suzanne here who can give a report, or if there's just a question, we can deal with the question.
I was the one that wanted it pulled. The thing that I want to know, I guess, more than anything, is that it was scheduled when we voted on to okay it at $56,409.65. And now we find out that we're going to add another $27,469.81 to it. And I would just like to know what caused this and how come it was so far off.
Sure. Hi, Suzanne Willits, Assistant Engineer. Thought somebody might be wondering about that, so I came here tonight to help explain. So the big unknown with this project really is what was underneath the surface. So we always knew that there was an unknown, and that was just the geology of the soil and the ground that had slipped out. And so how we dealt with this issue was we had a professional engineer on site who was delegated by Rod Wilburn of Lake Associates. And he basically was there overseeing the amount of excavation that needed to be done based on the geotechnical memorandum that we had to basically stabilize the project and stabilize the hillside. And so that was always an unknown. And it happened that we had to do about a day of exploration into getting down into the layers, digging in, seeing what was there. And then once we knew, we had the contractor cut back that amount. And so because the project and the bid items were based on lump sum, but also yardage, the yardage once we excavated was over. So I do also want to point out that the 50 some odd $1,000 that was the contract amount was actually really, really low. It was a lot lower than we expected. The engineer's estimate that I put together for the project was $90,000. So in that sense, it was actually more on. We were actually surprised that it came in so low. We also added a couple of drainage improvements. That was actually kind of a smaller unknown than the excavation, but we added more drainage packages, which are just rocks with pipes to help the hill drain out. So we actually added more than anticipated. I took a guess, but I didn't really know when I did the estimate, so that drove up the cost a little bit. We found a couple springs while we were there, which are probably the cause of the slip out, and so we added drainage to those spots. So that's why it's over.
So nobody makes a core drill to find out what's underneath all of this?
Yeah, there were actually core drills that were done, and that's how the geotechnical memorandum was developed, but you just don't really know everything until you get in there. And
Well, I understand that, but,
Yeah.
you know, it makes it, if we would have had a total of 90,000, which you thought it should have been, then it would have covered it. And my thing is that if it's that far off, that we need to, and I know we had to have it, but we need to make sure that we get a little bit closer, because that makes it $83,879.45. And that's quite a bit a miss in from 56. I just think that we can do a little better job to come up with the amount, because we're with a tight budget. We need to know these things as a council to pass them or not to pass them or whatever that we need to do. But we need to have all the facts.
So keep in mind that our estimate and what we put in the budget was 90,000. That was staff's knew it was going to be about that. We actually can't control the way bids come in. When somebody bids on a project, we are not allowed to negotiate with them pursuant to the contract code. And so when they give us a bid and they say they can do it for this amount, we sort of have to sit with it.
But we
And
knew that it wouldn't be 56,000.
I think what Suzanne is saying is when you're dealing with soils, you just don't know. So,
So all things being, sorry. So all things being equal, if you'd have dug in there, it could have been fine, and then it would have been okay, but like doing surgery, until you get in there and cut, you don't know what you're finding. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's always a balance that we have to reach and how much exploration we want to do and the cost of that exploration versus the unknown. So we had done some, we had actually, paid for this geotechnical memorandum that provided us a lot of guidance, really.
I have a question for you, or you, and then I'll let Greta ask. What keeps folks from just lowballing us on bids and then they come in with change orders? It seems like that seems to be government as a whole.
no, well, that is true, but what they do, we do look for it to be responsive and responsible bidders. And so we do look at the bid to see if it's reasonable, and what they put together was clearly reasonable according to our engineers. But again, I remember them saying, it's like, wow, that's pretty darn good. Let's see if they can do it, because sometimes they come through with the low bid and they can do it. I mean, we've had it time and time again where somebody bid something really low and they were able to do it.
Did we have multiple bids on this?
No, it's just one bid.
So-
No, on this we did have multiple
Oh, you did
bids. We
have
had like
multiple.
6 bids on this.
Okay.
And was the 56, was it way out of line compared
It
to the others?
was.
It was.
It was really low, which is now working in our favor because of all the excavation that we did have to do.
So it is working in our favor.
Yes, definitely.
So
We
we-
had money budgeted, we actually had more money budgeted for this, so we're still under it. I don't know that there's anything we really could have done other than
'Cause my
go
unders-
out and rebid the project. And in our mind, we had 6 bids, and this one came in really low, and I checked all the references, and I checked all the documentation, and everything looked fine, and so, you know, we went forward on that. And I think it's worked out well for us, actually. I do understand your point, Larry. I do. But I think in this case,
Greta has something.
Now,
So,
excuse me, go ahead, Greta, and then I'll.
I remember when this contract came up and the bid was quite a bit lower than the engineer's estimate, and I asked Jeremy about this. I said, is it weird that this estimate is so much lower and that that bid is so much lower than the other bids? And he said that Diamond had, I think, if I recall correctly, that Diamond had done another project for the city and had done well, and they were working very effectively in keeping, is that not?
They had worked for us, they had not worked with them.
And there was something that I recall about them having actually been effective at keeping their prices low, and so you felt confident accepting this lower bid. So perhaps what could, a suggestion for the future, if something comes in really low like this, you might want to warn council that this is much lower than the engineer's estimate. It might get a lot closer to the money that we set aside. I mean,
I could do that. I just want to say that this is really great that it came in lower. And
Yeah.
if it were any of the other 5 bidders, we would just be having a different conversation. The conversation would just be they're way over budget. So if we take them out of the equation and I gave you a $100,000 bid, it would be the same result, it's just a higher number.
And let me clarify something. So when we do a change order, it's because of unexpected circumstances. It's not because somebody underbid the project.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to understand.
Yeah.
It's they found conditions that were not as was bid out. So therefore, any of these bids that came in would have been affected by substantial change orders.
Exactly.
Therefore, this bid, we actually came out ahead because it was so low.
So Larry, then Sabrina, you were turning this.
So there is no way to say, to council that I don't understand why it's so low because everybody else's was bid. You don't have to say the names or the numbers or anything else. It's just that if we're talking about budget, it's easy for us to say, okay, this is nice at 56,000. But when we get going and the 27 is just to cover the person that did the work, is that correct?
That's for additional work that was done
Okay.
outside of the original scope.
Okay, so
More
this is-
dirt was removed and more drainage was put in.
So everybody that came and worked on it that isn't employed by the city, that's all included in this 27?
Right, the contractor.
No,
And the
I'm talking
contractor's
about
employees.
Rod or anybody else that came to it that that said, okay, this is right at 27,000 is the right amount. So there won't be a dime more spent on this than $83,879.
I think there was like 3 questions there. The materials testing bills haven't come in, so there is an estimate there. What this is for actually here is an exact number with the contractor.
That's
So
what
it's
I'm asking.
possible, so the contractor this is the final number for the contractor.
But SHN is the one that did the soils, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have all
And
the,
so we have that price on top of this $83,897, right?
right, and it's
And-
included in the budget there that you have in front of you. June has put the estimation in there.
that's the 7,768.
Right,
That includes the
exactly.
SHN?
That's right.
Okay.
And so the LACO bills also have already been paid as well.
Okay, I was
So-
I was always amazed at these, and I kind of agree with Jerry once in a while that they do this just to get the job, and then that used to be the way the city was ran. believe me.
But
I do,
and-
I understand what you're saying, I just really want to bring home the point that this is work that had to be done. We didn't know the springs were there, and we didn't know what the geological layers were like until we actually got in there. So regardless of who was doing it, it was going to be the same
Yeah,
amount
so-
of change
so-
orders.
So, yeah, the thing is this was not within the scope of the bid. This work was not within the scope. So it did not matter that this was the low bid. This was outside of the
And
scope.
I understand.
Yeah.
So that doesn't have
That-
anything to
yeah.
do with what you.
No, the
Right.
example I gave is not this, and I
It
get
is
that.
not this.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
get that.
I just want to clarify.
So the low bid is irrelevant if
Right.
all people had the same opportunity to present a bid on the same job. The
That's
question
right.
I have is, did any of the bidders include, or was it included, how much backfill that would be used for a job?
It was all exactly the
So
same.
it's
That's the thing with the
So all
bid, is
things
you
being
make sure
equal-
everyone is bidding on the exact same information.
Okay, so it's not really, for me then, it has nothing to do with the issue of the fact that one bid was higher than the other, this is what we got, this is what we agreed to accept, and now we're just trying to decide whether or not we want to approve the additional cost for the backfill.
Right. And the
Yes.
work has been done.
And the work has been done. So,
It's
okay.
completed and it looks very nice, and what we have now is a road that's not gonna fall out on us in our watershed, which is very important for monitoring our watershed, because it's important that our staff and others have access to that to make sure that nothing is going awry out there, that people aren't trespassing, that it remains in pristine condition. So it's very important that we keep, that's really what this job is actually about, is making sure that that road, so the slip out came right at the edge of the road, and if we had kept it like that, it would have just kept eating out the road. So this was the remedy, and I think it looks really good. I think it turned out well.
I'd like to move approval of that item B for the staff, per staff report.
I'll second.
Motion, any further discussion?
Yeah. I'm not saying that that's not what happened. I'm just asking questions because I need to know what they have to say before I vote.
Okay.
I appreciate the explanation, and I also appreciate what Stephanie said, that it's not like a contractor can do a low bid and then just come back and say, oh, it's costing us more than I thought, add some more money. They have to be doing something that wasn't included in the bid package, and that's the case here.
And Larry, I just want to say that I appreciate that you ask questions, because it's always better that we fully understand anyway. So I really appreciate that you ask questions.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
anybody from the public want to ask anything or add anything? Okay. Back up here, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
There we go.
We don't need to have a,
Okay. Proceed,
Do we need a
And I'm
roll
sorry,
call?
I made a mistake on C, I was thinking D, so I don't have a problem with C. Yeah,
Oh, well,
well, then we still have to move approval.
yeah, sorry, my bad.
all right. So Kathy, do we need to do a roll call vote for the last one?
I would like to because there's dollars.
Yeah, let's go back to B again and roll call vote.
Councilmember Kanne.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Strong.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes. All right. Item C.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, the motion and second.
C.
I moved.
I'll second.
And got it.
Greta seconded. Any further discussion?
Quick question.
Go for it.
Do you want to?
No.
Okay. I just want to, just for clarification, the amount of money that we've been paying related to the landfill closure, has it been coming out of the general fund?
yes.
That's all. Just for public purposes?
Yes.
Just want to make sure that
And-
it came from there, we're putting it back there.
And and I guess point of clarification that you could, for the public also, is that we're still in discussions with the county and still looking for money
So
in
what,
the past.
so we have not, so this is a landfill we jointly own, and we are supposed to be jointly paying for expenses. We have not jointly been paying, the city's been shouldering virtually all of the expenses I forgot how long now, but it's been quite some time. So when we actually discussed this issue with the county, and they've agreed because they wanted very detailed costing records that we did not immediately have. Now that we have a new finance director and we've been able to start sort of catching up on things, and we've agreed to start with this year and then start going backwards as we find our records. So this is a huge thing that we were, county was really good to deal with. They told us what the requirements were. They actually, they paid the bill. We had a similar issue actually with the animal shelter. We settled that as well. But that was a very reverse thing where we actually had owed them money for 3 years. So we've been doing, it's very good that we are able to do this today.
And this is only a 1 year.
This is only 1 year, and now we're working on
Going
last
back,
year.
yeah.
And so we're working on it year by year, which is nice.
All right. Any further questions? Otherwise, anybody from the public? All right. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Kanne.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Strong.
Yes?
Stransky.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes. All right. Item D. Who pulled that one? Oh,
I did.
okay.
I questioned this from the very start, and I called on Saturday, which was, I knew nobody would be at the council, but I was not being able to be here on Monday, so I called and let Kathy know that I had these questions. And what we're doing is transferring from the half-cent sales tax to the gas tax. And we are transferring money, and I wanted to know what the $246,867 was going to entail. I mean, why are we transferring this money other than that we probably don't have the money in the gas tax to pay for it? But what does the 246,867, what does that cover, or what does that do?
So that's not itemized. What it is just so yearly, and when we're squaring up our budget, apparently we take, when we're dealing with roads, we are dealing with the gas tax and the half-cent sales tax. And those are the major two funding mechanisms that fund our road projects. Often it's, we don't always know how much is going to be in the gas tax. And so every single year there's a shift of approximately this size. However, in previous years, it was done administratively and not in front of council. So this year we brought this to council, but this has been done every single year. And it's because we do not have a crystal ball regarding gas tax. And so Jean has explained this to me. And unfortunately, she's not here today. She was on a pre-approved leave, and she can talk to you more about it. But it is routine. Both of these funds are earmarked for roads. And so they're pretty interchangeable in terms of how they're used. It's not the general fund that gets used to fund our operations. This is, when we're talking about the sales tax, it is purely the road tax. So it is similar funds.
It's my understanding, and Jim, you've been at this as long as I have in the city, that I seem to remember going back to Denny McIntyre and them, that this conversation happened for the shift, or Bruce, that it has come to council at
Has
some
it?
point. And that...
June looked it up and said, you guys haven't been to council. And
Yeah,
we should.
it has been in the past, because there was always this, some council members wanted to see pavement, other council members understood that, you can pave over something, but at some point or another, there may be undergrounding issues or things like that, and depending on what source of funding can also be applied, like we do with water or sewer projects, like we've done in the past coordinating, that sometimes there wasn't enough money there. And the gas tax basically is a fixed amount. I always read the little tag there at Safeway or Chevron where it says what the gas tax is, and you're going, it stays the same. It doesn't go up when gas prices go up. Only sales tax goes up, but the gas tax stays the same, and it hasn't kept pace with, and that's what the whole SB1 thing. And I thought we had a conversation regarding what SB1 some grant we had done earlier in the year where we couldn't apply.
Right. So we didn't have, we were not able to accept SB1 funds because we did not have enough matching funds in the general fund, because we can't use the half-cent sales tax for matching funds. We can only use the rest of our general fund, and we didn't want to use those funds.
Okay.
The decision
So I mean, I
was
think
made.
it's a bigger issue, and I know that some of the folks in the public want to see pavement, but they,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a list of things that are eligible for all of these funds. I don't have them, these aren't itemized funds. This is just squaring up the budget, sort of.
Larry.
So what we're going to do is, there's not enough money in the gas tax, so we're going to subsidize it by giving money to the gas tax out of the transportation, half-cent
Yes.
sales tax.
Yes.
But it's just a bulk amount, and we have no idea what the 246,867 is going to be.
No,
What it's
it
gonna cover.
already happened. I mean, it's a squaring, it's a budgetary function that is sort of routine. That
Okay.
happens every year.
Okay, my
And I
question,
wish I could answer more questions. I'm sorry, because the finance director is not here.
so, just answer this. So you can't tell me what the $247.68 or 67 cents is going to cover?
Well, that's sort of equivalent to you asking me $5 out of the budget, whose salary is that paying for? Every penny is not apportioned. It is like I'm sorry, I'm not explaining it well. Maybe Sabrina can.
Mayor, if I could, so Larry, this is how I look at it. At the beginning of the year, we had a budget, and the amount that was presented to us in the budget was really a combination of the transportation fund and the tax fund. And they said, this is how much money you're going to have for transportation. And then we said, okay, these are our priorities, and this is what we want to accomplish. They accomplished what we wanted on the list, and now they're asking us to pay for it. But since it's in two different funds, they're asking us, can you put the money into this one fund so we can simply pay it out of here? Does that simplify it?
No, it makes it cloudier, because what happens is that what you're doing is that you're just throwing a figure out there, and then you're knowing that you're going to be able to backfill it. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Greta?
So I had a similar reaction. I think we probably all have gotten a lot of questions from the public about what is our half-cent sales tax paying for? And so I went in and I talked with Kathy and I talked with June and I said, what is this money paying for? And doesn't it seem like a shell game if we're moving money from one fund to the next and we don't have a clear indication of what that money is being spent on? And June agreed that she didn't like it, that it was what she thought of as sloppy bookkeeping, and her goal was to, in the future, not have this transfer, so that expenses to the half-cent sales tax fund were listed under that fund, so it was clear for everyone to see what was going where and what was paying for what. The thing that I did find a little troubling was when I asked her, what we were trying to cover in that gas tax fund, she said things like street sweeping and tree trimming, trees over the streets. And I wasn't here when the half-cent sales tax measure was passed by the voters, but my understanding was that it was going to be used for pavement. And so, fixing potholes, fixing roads. I didn't think that it was used for things like street sweeping or trimming trees. So I asked June, is there a way for us to find out specifically what the voters voted on? What allowances are there supposed to be for that money? And that would make it clearer for the council and make it clearer for the public that the monies that are being collected are actually being spent on the things that the public thought they were being spent on. So I don't have a problem with this number. I just think that we need to make it clear, and I agree with June, that ultimately we shouldn't be doing these transfers, that it should be much more clear what's being spent to which fund.
I guess I'm just trying to think of to move this along tonight, that, would June be back at our next meeting?
She is. So I don't know if this is questionable enough for you to not be able to vote on it. I mean, this is something that sort of has to happen because there's a negative balance in the gas fund, and so it's important to cover that. It is fairly, I think it's great that we all want to do a better job in making sure that things are budgeted quickly. But keep in mind, we have an extremely small staff, and so we are not going to have as tight as books as a bigger city. I am used to seeing these sorts of things in other cities as a really routine item, and I want you guys to be comfortable with that. However, I would need another few people on staff to be able to account for every penny. So, I mean,
Well,
it's just hard, but
Stephanie,
it is
I
up
guess
to you. It is absolutely up to you.
I guess what I
to do.
was looking at is, maybe it has been routine in the past, and yes, as Greta pointed out, people ask, and I've seen it where the debate happens, is it payment or not payment, or gee, and I've seen the arguments over, well, we needed to do this job, and yes, payment was involved, but we had to basically do base. I remember when they repaved Northbrook, and they had to dig under a couple years ago, and apparently there wasn't enough base there, but they didn't realize that, and that wasn't pavement as far as some folks were concerned.
But we made those decisions when we approved those.
That wasn't us, I'm talking about a previous project. So I guess what I'm getting at is we move ahead today, but maybe in the interest of transparency, that if June could send us a memo, and that memo could be available.
Or maybe at the next council meeting, June can talk about it a little bit, or perhaps at our retreat, you can talk about that. Or if any individual council members would like to talk about it, that's great. Also about the different items that go into a half-cent sales tax. Some of those items, street sweeping may not seem like pavement, but it's actually really essential for street health to be swept. And so maybe some of the decisions that get made behind why we allocate costs to certain things, we can talk about that at a council meeting. Any of these, if you want to agendize, that's fine.
I don't want to, I know that our retreat is next Monday, and I don't want June kind of hitting the ground, and then, I would be content at the next council meeting versus
Sure.
the next, but I'm just thinking maybe that way everybody has a comfort level forward, and the public kind of gets some education, because I think from time to time, things get explained, and then it's a new council, and I think people want answers, and sometimes things run into each other. I sat in the back plenty of time and heard explanations, but now I wonder, it's not something I decided, but it's a question that's out there. Madge, and then Greta.
Well, I'm comfortable with us taking action on this tonight. I think it is really an accounting function that could have just been done administratively, but because I don't have any doubt that we have spent enough money that qualifies under the sales tax initiative that the voters passed to qualify for spending this money on it. I think that we've done an awful lot of paving projects this year, and I think I agree with Stephanie also that some of the things that are part of maintaining the streets aren't just concrete, it's not just the paving, it's the other stuff. So I think, on the other hand, that it would be helpful to have, and we're going to have a review of how we stand on our budgets, and what the total amount that was spent, how much of it is sales tax money, how much of that is gas tax money. That's fine, but I'm pretty confident we have definitely spent enough on things that qualify as the sales tax.
My recollection is that the half-cent sales tax is not specifically limited to asphalt.
Yeah.
That it's generally road-related maintenance and infrastructure, but I don't have an exact definition for it. I wasn't prepared to come here tonight with that, but I think it shouldn't be too difficult for us to tell you at a future meeting exactly what is and is not supposed to be an expenditure under that tax.
Thank you.
So meanwhile, should I make a motion?
I have one more comment. I just wanted to say, Stephanie, I sense that you're frustrated that this feels like a routine thing to you and we're spending too much time on it in your eyes. I was elected by people who have questions. And so if I don't understand something, I'm sorry that's frustrating for you, but I need to understand it so I can explain it to the people who trust me to make sure that we are doing things that they want done with their money. The taxpayers out there are the reason all of us are here and the reason the city exists. And so I don't mean to be criticizing you when I ask these questions, and when it feels like you are frustrated if we ask questions, and that's not our intent, to frustrate you. It's to make it clear to the public who pays us.
I perfectly appreciate that, and I want to make it absolutely clear to you how things are done. I just hope that you listen to our explanations and try to understand them, and I welcome all the questions that you have, because every question you should know, but some questions I can't, we can't. You can ride along with us, and if you want to know how streets are built, ride along with us and we can tell you about it. If people want to sit in June's office and learn about accounting, that's absolutely great. I think that you can do that. You can absolutely have all of those. I hope that you have some trust in me as an administrator, and as I've done this for so many years, that this doesn't come from a place of, that this comes from a place of wanting to know and not, well, I just...
And I hear you, and I appreciate that, and I think we all do try to listen, and I ask that you try to have some patience with us when we're asking these questions that we believe we are asking for the benefit of the community.
I do, I absolutely do.
We need to trust you, and you need to trust us. We're not trying to
I
get
absolutely
you.
do.
We're just trying to make it clear to the public.
And-
That's all.
And I just want to point out that when, I knew you wouldn't have the answer when you said, look, June isn't here.
June is not
And-
here.
And so I get it there, but in the interest of moving on, I thought that, having it come back, because I know that the public is still going to expect us to go, hey, what is that out there? Like Jim, I remember there was an explanation once, and it wasn't just pavement, because I remember that those on the council that said, where's my pavement? Wait a second, and it was explained that there was,
Quite a few things covered.
that it could qualify for it. Just,
Yeah.
I just, it's kind of like if my wife went and spent that amount on my Visa card,
Sure.
I'd probably want to know what she spent it on, or at least a general amount. I probably don't care about the $3 cup of coffee somewhere, but the, $100,000 bill at whatever
Sure.
Macy's might be something I would. And so, again, I would be satisfied with, at the next council meeting. I just think it might be too short of a time with June just kind of coming back into town for Monday for her to have an answer.
I'm sure she can, though. I mean, that was fine. And I do apologize if it seems like I'm impatient. I'm really not impatient. I'm not. And I'm so sorry that if it comes off that way and it doesn't. Really, I don't mean to feel that way. And so if I've come off that way, I do apologize.
I don't think that's an appropriate use of the retreat time either. I think it would be next meeting if you aren't comfortable making a decision on this item tonight, that it should go to the next meeting. But I just assume that we act on this, and then at the next meeting, when June is there, she can give us some more background on it.
It's up to you.
So I move approval of the staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion because it was something I feel like we approved in the past and that we performed enough of the duties under the half-cent gas tax. But I'm going to ask that we receive a copy of the gas tax and that when we're doing our budget planning, that we're allocating items specifically to this fund and that there's no more crossing over.
Yeah, I mean, there's likely to be some. There's likely to be some just because you don't always know how much tax you're going to get in. And so there's uncertainty there. And so there's going to be some transfers, always, because you always have your best guess. And we couldn't do better. We can do much better. We shouldn't be transferring this much money.
But I think it is time for us to get, a good point was brought up, a copy of the gas tax because.
What do you mean by copy of the gas tax?
A copy of the half-cent, sorry, a copy of
Are you
the
sure?
half-cent
Yes.
sales tax, so that we can take a look at it.
And I
just
think
make
we've
sure we're
distributed
doing
that
our duty.
before. We have distributed that to council.
I think it's a good
before.
refresher.
This is a question.
It's been a while.
This
That was
question comes up a lot,
Yeah.
so it has been passed out before.
Yeah.
All right,
So it's been
You have a
moved.
second.
so we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public? All right, I'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Kanne.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Strong.
Yes.
Stransky.
No.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
They have direction. All right, informational reports, we do get some of those, and they're in the packet and available for the public, but we don't discuss those. Right to appeal, persons who are dissatisfied with decisions of the city council may have the right to a review of that decision by court. The city has adopted section 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure. All right, item 8, commissions and agencies and authorities. Willis City Council meets concurrently as the City Planning Commission, its successor agency, and we have no business there in either of those. City manager reports and recommendations.
I would just like to tell folks, I was recently attended the City Managers, International Association of City Managers meets every year. I attended that conference to assure everybody I did it on my own time. No taxpayer funds were used on this conference. It's a very important conference to go to for city administrators, and that was really thousands of administrators or city managers internationally from across the country. This is very well attended by managers from small cities, as we have an opportunity to meet with one another and to discuss how to do things and discuss our successes and our failures. And it's just an incredible conference and an opportunity. I think that what stood out for me, I attended lots and lots of classes, and I networked with many folks, and we met with vendors on new technologies and ways to do things. And it is always very enlightening to see how other people are doing things throughout the country. And talking about new topics, there was a lot of talk about sustainability and how we some emergency planning, how small cities get things done. I think that what I came out of this with a great deal of pride of the city of Willits is that we do things really well here. We are a very professional city. We have an incredible staff. We have a strong staff, and we are doing some amazing initiatives. We should really hold our heads up high, and I thank the council for letting us do that and giving us good direction. I think that people look at Willits as really as a leading city in what we do. And I was able to tell Willits' story, and people were really fascinated by our story as a beautiful city, a well-run city, and a city that keeps track of its residents, and our new economic development opportunities. And I had a lot to say about how well we were doing in Willits, and I had a lot of people say, God, I really want to go to Willits and see it. So it was a very good conference, and if anyone has questions about that, we'd love to answer it. And it was, I hope someday that we are in a financial position that that other city employees can go to that as well, other department heads can go. I was able to see many of my colleagues that I've seen before.
Under this, we have item A, adopt a resolution approving an agreement with North Coast Resource Management.
Yes, today before you, we talked at budget time about a project that Todd here from NCRM, he's going to come talk to you about this project. He had an idea that he came to me with, and Todd's been working quite a bit with our Watershed, which is an incredible pristine forest of over 3,000 acres that protects our watershed. And it is a resource for us, and he had some wonderful ideas about how we can possibly maybe get some revenue, and at the same time as helping to preserve and to protect this watershed. This is a very complicated process. It involves sort of surveying, making sure that, looking at the titles. Actually, I'm going to let Todd talk about it. All the plans to it. I mean, we don't know. We can't tell you for sure whether it's going to work, but it is a great idea, and I would like to pursue this. And I think that council was excited about it too. We talked about the budget. This is only we kind of threw out a number of $30,000 as a starting point to really look at the feasibility of it. We talked about this as a scope of services. The other way we could look at this, we always talk to NCRM for all of our forestry needs. They are sort of the only game in town and the best game in town in terms of understanding our watershed and understanding forestry. And we seek advice from them all the time, and it's almost, we talk to him like we talk to Rod about engineering, and it's almost worth it we can have a $30,000 contract for this scope of services, or talk about Todd maybe being our contract forestry manager, and that's another way to think of it. But if I could have Mr. McMahon come in and talk about this project a little bit, he can answer all your questions. It is complicated. I don't have the answers, but he will.
Well, it's nice to be here again in front of you all. I want to introduce Kate Cahill. Kate's a senior forester with NCRM and actually did a lot of the legwork up on the watershed during the salvage operations. And if we go forward with this, Kate will be doing a lot of the legwork also. So mostly I just wanted you to meet her. A conservation easement is there's a lot of conservation easements in Mendocino County. I'm currently working on about 4 other ones for large landowners. I assume all of you had a chance to read through the proposal that sort of outlines the basics of it, but the idea of a good conservation easement is that you're giving up a right to something that you don't really want to do anyway, and if we do it right, then somebody will pay you not to do what you don't want to do. and that's what we're trying to do here. And so in specifically on this project, and what we talked about doing here is going in and first sort of identifying what the high conservation values are that are out on the property. And so we can name some of them already. We know that water quality is a really important one out there. There's wildlife benefits, there's the forestry, and there are different organizations out there that would like to team with us to protect those things in perpetuity, so that the next council doesn't come in and say, hey, we have an opportunity to make a bunch of money. Let's sell the watershed, let's subdivide it, let's put a bunch of McMansions up there. I mean, it's an opportunity for you to sort of create a pathway going forward again that aligns with the goals that you want to do. So our first goal is to really identify those things so that we can then present them to a partner, a conservation partner, and it would be a nonprofit. It could be a land trust. It could be somebody like a conservation fund, Save the Redwoods League, Nature Conservancy, different groups like that that would be the holder of an easement that we would create. And then the next step is to get them to start to pay to do all the studies that are out there and find a funding source. And so easements that I'm working on right now, most easements in Mendocino County have been funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board. But there's also money that comes in from federal forest legacy dollars, PG&E mitigation, Caltrans, EMP funds. These are all different things, and it could be a combination of funding sources that would come in and do this. I kind of jumped ahead there. I think that the biggest thing that that we potentially could sell or give up, you have to give up something to get money, would be the development rights up there. And so we haven't done the due diligence yet to see really what the patent parcel situation is out there. But assuming that that property was all homesteaded, is 160 acres, and you have 3,200 acres out there, so potentially 20 patent parcels that the county would let you subdivide down to. So we essentially would merge those into one parcel, so you could never subdivide it, and then we would appraise what the value of each of those individual parcels are, if hypothetically you were to sell them, and then you would appraise what's the value of those parcels if you sold them as one unit, which will be a lot less. The bigger the unit, the less per acre you get. And so potentially, there might be $1,000 delta per acre on each one of those. So just the development rights potentially could be worth a couple $1 million. So it's, as Stephanie said, it's a long process. It's not something we're going to turn around in 3 months. and it really depends on what partners we get a hold of. We can do these initial phases that we lined out in this scope, probably within the next 4 or 5 months, and start to identify people and then feed information back to staff and to you, and to start to make some decisions on where you would want to go with this. But they're satisfying. They're, you know, the agencies really like them. They're good for the community in the fact that you're not having fragmentation all around the edge of this, and you're maintaining the watershed, and I think that's a really important thing, and you know, and it aligns very well again with the main purpose of the watershed, which is water quality and providing you drinking water. So, sort of been all over there with that description. I'm sure you have some questions, and we'd be welcome to try to answer them.
Sabrina?
I like the idea of conservation of the watershed. The question I have is if we approve this $30,000, it seems by from your presentation that the direction we would be giving you would be explore all the options that you just mentioned. But the last one where you talked about development, I'm not in favor of exploring that. And so I'm nervous about saying we want to spend $30,000 for you to spend your time on including that as an option. And I'm just curious if the rest of the council, if that's a direction that we want to spend funds to potentially explore, or whether we're more focused on the conservation side of things.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to hear from my fellow council members.
Maybe along this, and maybe I'm going to ask a question of you. You're not exactly advocating development, you're advocating putting a dollar value so that when you...
Yeah, I didn't explain that very well.
Okay.
Let me try that again.
Yep.
So, in order to develop values here, and I do not want to develop the watershed.
And I don't want to support that.
But what we have to look at this as is in valuing, first you have to decide again what you want to keep and what potentially you could give up. What are the rights that are out there? If a third party bought this property, what could they do? What's the highest and best fiscal thing they could do on the property? So we have to look at all those, and that becomes the hypothetical before condition. What could we do? How much money could you make off that property? If we cut all the trees down that they would let us, if we developed it, we did all those things that we don't want to do, but we have to have that as a baseline. Then we come back and we say, this is what we want to do, and we value the property down at this level. The difference between what you could do and what we're going to do becomes the value of the easement. So you have to look at both of those.
So in your description of what the $30,000 will be spent on is coming up with that value.
It's identifying the rights that potentially we have.
Okay.
Do we have the right to subdivide up there? Do we have patent parcels up there? If we don't have patent parcels up there, we're going to find that out. We're not going to get anywhere near spending $30,000. But we need to chase it out and make sure legally we could do it, because we can't propose to do something in an easement and give up the right to something we can't do. So we have to follow through with that with the title report. Check with the county, again, research the patent parcels, and that's kind of one of the biggest steps initially. And then, you know, it's working with city staff and deciding, you know, what are the things that we have to do up there or that we want to do? What are the rights that we want to maintain on the property, and what are the ones that we can give up? And that becomes the basis of the easement.
I'm worried that I may be sending a message that I'm willing to give anything up there. I'm just telling you what my reservations are about
Totally get it.
supporting this. I
Yeah.
don't want to give the impression that we're willing to give anything up, and I'm very mindful of every dollar we're spending. I just got my tax bill in the mail today, and so I'm thinking, okay, this is what it's already costing for sewer, and every time we spend $1 on water and sewer, we need to make sure that's in line with our vision and what we want. And I know that the city's looking for money, and while you're talking, I'm thinking, this is an opportunity for us to potentially bring in some money, but is the watershed really where I want to see bringing in money? Unless you can bring me an argument that supports staying away from development, that I'm not supporting that at all.
Yeah.
So
Well,
can
I
you
think,
talk to me about more
yeah,
about
so
the
again, in a perfect world,
conservatories?
if this happens the way we want it, the watershed will continue to be maintained the way it is. Nobody will ever be able to develop it, and somebody's going to pay you not to develop it. That's our goal.
That I like.
Okay. But we have to look at those things to come up with the basis.
Okay.
There has to be a a legal threat. We can't make up and say we're going to build 300 tract homes up there. If we can't really do it, nobody's going to pay us not to do it. So we have to make sure we can. But the intention, our intention is not to go do developing out there. It's not only looking at those rights, but it's also looking at the conservation values that are up there. And so it's looking at, is there yellow-legged frog habitat up there that somebody needs mitigation money for? We know there's spotted owls up there, there's sensitive species that somebody will actually pay us to protect that. Right now you're protecting that land, nobody's giving you any money for it. So with an easement, we would permanently say, here's where the spotted owl lives. There's a 250-acre activity center. We will never do any timber harvesting there. We'll maintain this for spotted owl habitat. And we look at what the value of the timber is in there, and then we say, we're not going to cut it. And so then they would pay us that dollar amount to not cut those trees, or pay us that money not to develop the land.
Do we have any examples of other cities who decided to go out and get conservatories and stuff like that have paid? What success have other cities had? I'm just thinking about the value of the investment here. Have other cities been successful that you know of?
I know the city of Austin does this.
Yeah, I have not worked with the city. I've done a lot with private landowners that have been very successful. I did a tour today with Save the Redwoods League on a 15,000-acre ranch that had 74 parcels, and we merged them into 3 parcels and created 1,000 acres of old-growth reserves and created sustainable harvesting, and they got paid a lot of money to do that, and they're really happy with it. And the other thing it does is that a lot of people use the conservation easement for estate planning, and the current generation may have an idea that they're good stewards of the land, and this is the way we want to manage it, and they want to make sure future generations do that too. Well, this gives you a pathway to say, this is what we're going to do with this property. Versus in these families situations, people die, and then there's a bunch more heirs, and some people want money, and pretty soon they're selling these properties and cutting all the trees down, and what they had taken 100 years to acquire gets wiped out.
So Larry has a question.
Yes, Larry.
2 things. First thing, with the watershed, we had and I don't know the exact name of it, but the forestry was going to come through and cut the underbrush down, and they called it a green zone or whatever for the forest fire. Does this have any bearing on that at all? Because they're going to come through our area.
Yeah. No, and so in designing, assuming that we find there's some rights that we can give up and we find a partner, then the next step would be writing a conservation easement, and you would describe the practice that you could do, and there would be a whole section on forest management. There would be a forest management plan that was written, which we probably need regardless if we do a conservation easement or not on the property. And you would say these are allowable practices up there, and we would definitely have every practice that provides for fire prevention and hazard reduction we would want to keep on the table. That's something we don't want to give up, and nobody really wants to pay us not to do fire prevention. That's not something we could make money off of. But that's just good practices. There'll be specifics, best management practices for road maintenance, water course crossings, shaded fuel breaks, doing the grant work like CAL FIRE is doing up there right now. I mean, that would all still be encouraged. Another example of a right, and we were talking about some of them, was like, I know in the past the property has been grazed. Currently there's no grazing up there. I know talking with Scott and staff, they really don't want to have grazing up there because of potential impacts to water quality. That could be a right you could give up. Now, granted, the grazing value on the watershed is not a lot, but maybe it's $5,000 a year, and if somebody will pay you not to graze, versus right now you're not grazing, nobody's paying you anything for it. Maybe that's an opportunity. And that's a small one, but you start adding up all these different components, and you put them into this conservation easement. And we'll be talking about, if we go forward, we'll be talking about this for multiple years before we get to the end of this thing, so.
He's got another question.
Yes.
The second question is, the $30,000 that we're going to spend, is that the last amount of money that will be spent to get what we want, or is it different increments that will cost more money up and down the line? You'll come back to us for more of money for this and more money for that? Or is it $30,000 it?
So $30,000 is a rough estimate, not to exceed. I wanted to put a cap on this. I don't know exactly what it's going to cost because a lot of it is going out and it depends on what we find. It's a little bit like the discussion with the engineer earlier today until we get down in the ground and see what's there. And I don't have the ability to go in and take a core sample right and tell you what that is. So we have to identify rights that are on the property. And I know defining the rights and the initial step will be significantly less than $30,000. It's the reaching out and finding the partners to join with us. That's the part that's a little bit harder, and it sort of depends on who has funding, what time of year it is, what other projects they have going on. I mean, those are the unknowns. Say I've worked with 4 or 5 of these organizations that are doing conservation easements, and I mean, people would love to hold an easement on that. The idea is that if we get the right one, they will pay for the work going forward, and you won't. So I'm trying to get us to that point as quick as possible. But I can't tell you the exact dollar amount. I mean, all I can do is tell you that, you know, here's our hourly rate, here's a list of things we're going to do. We're going to be reporting to Stephanie and staff as we go along here. All through this process, you know, staff and you can say, keep going, slow down, go this direction. It's kind of that kind of process. So
What I'm after is, for a simple term, is I don't want a balloon payment at the end. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want you to say 30,000 this time, and then in 3 years come back and say, well, we misestimated and it's $100,000 or something to that effect.
I'm going to come back to you many times with updates of where this is potentially is going to go. And every time I'm going to provide an estimate of where it's going to be. This is way premature to say what this easement is going to cost. But like my goal is, and what we've done on all the other easements, is we've got the grantee to carry the cost. So there's an initial cost for the grantor to start the process. And then they take it over and cover the cost. And that's all negotiable stuff too with the grantor and the grantee. I mean, we can set this up how we want. If the goal here is to get as much money as you want and you don't want to put any money out right now because things are tough, then that's the way we approach it. If, you know, go ahead.
I mean, I think that we are limited in that some of the work that we're doing, particularly in the initial stages, in the valuation of the land and gathering parcels and things like that, sort of have to be done by just us and not with a person that we're going to be in a transaction with at arm's length.
Yeah.
So it is, we actually do have to do some of this independently without them, without any partners who we will then be at arm's length with.
Right.
We will
Right,
bring in,
but might they insist upon or want some uses of the property that perhaps the city does not want, like public access and
Potentially.
hiking and...
potentially, and it's all on the table for us to say yes or no, and you know, ultimately we can say no. Again, the more you give up, the more you can get, and it's that balance, and you decide these are the things we absolutely want to maintain as the rights to do up there because it matches our goals for the property. And then there's some things that maybe, well, we could go either way. But if you get enough money for it, you know, those are all things.
Brett had a question then, Madge.
Well, my question was similar to Larry's, that the 30,000 on the table right now is for phase 1 and 2, which is identifying what the rights are. Phases 3, 4, and 5 that you've outlined, if I'm understanding you correctly now, wouldn't necessarily come back to be an expense for the city. They would be transferred to whatever partner we find to work with us.
Yeah. So for example, we'll have to hire a MIA appraiser to appraise this. They're going to have to more than likely bring in a conservation attorney to work on this. Other deals we've done, sometimes we split the costs, sometimes the grantee pays it, sometimes the grantee pays all of it, and to close the deal, because we know we're getting X number of $1 million, at that point then things are squared up, and so the money doesn't come out of the grantor's budget at the time, but once they have the proceeds at the end, so it's delayed. like I say, that's all negotiable.
I feel like the difficult part maybe for us deciding on this is you're asking to put so much money, X amount of money up front, potentially to realize anywhere from as little as $5,000 if all we gave up was grazing rights to multiple millions of dollars if we gave up development rights. So there could be a very big return on a rather small investment. But then again, there could be a very small return on a $30,000 investment. So it's hard for, I think, at least for me, to determine if this is a good way to use city funds, which are very tight, on something that we don't quite know the outcome of.
I think that very early we're going to identify whether we have development rights up there. That's the biggest thing for us. And we're gonna, maybe we spend $5,000 of the 30, and we know we have the right to do that. If we don't have those rights, this will all stop. Because we're not gonna pursue a conservation easement, spend years to do it, to give up $5,000 worth of grazing rights. That's not the goal. That's an add-on, as an example, but really the development rights are where the money's at.
Great, thank you.
So,
Mitch?
I think that your answer to Greta just answered most of what I wanted to comment on too. So that this is, you're going to look for the biggest potential payoff of investing. We're investing this upfront money. When you hit a brick wall that it's not going to be in our fiscal benefit to do it, you stop spending that money. So it's on a time and materials only, with the cap. The maximum you can spend without going forward to some other phase is $30,000. And meanwhile, once you've identified what the opportunities are, if it's looking good, then you will be reporting to us, you will be reporting to city manager and potentially to us directly as you want to get further direction from us.
I didn't want to create a situation, when Stephanie asked me to put a scope together for this, I didn't want to put, because I don't know exactly what it really depends on what we find out about the property, but I didn't want to put up a situation where, task 1A, $750, task 2B, I really don't know. I mean, I understand everybody's concerns about not spending a bunch of money, and like I say, we've done a number of projects for the city that have been not to exceed projects. Our performances come in the past where we have not maxed out those dollars. We've tried to get the biggest return we can and meet your goals, and that's what we'll be trying to do again here. I don't have a better way to present how to do this to you, because like I say, we're at the very beginning of it, and it's a long process. Potentially, it's really nice at the end if we can get there. And like I said, we'll talk a lot more about this as we go forward.
Okay, so I like that approach, and I think we've had a very good experience with your judgment on those kinds of things, so I feel pretty comfortable with that. If it looks like we have development rights that make this a good prospect, and you start looking for potential partners who might buy an easement, I think at some point in that process, it would be real helpful for us to see some of the, like, a little more information about their track records, what kinds of projects, how successful have those different partners been, and doing this kind of thing, because a lot of us are new at that.
Yeah, well, there's going to be, hopefully, there will be a lot of tours, and they're going to want to come up and see the property. It'd be a great opportunity for you to come up and meet them, sort of talk about things. They're going to, we're going to spend a lot of time together. So, and it's a fun process. I mean, it really is. People feel good about these when they're done. Like I said, you've set these properties on a good track. You've hopefully got some money for it. I mean, some people do conservation easements strictly, they donate conservation easements. And so all they're doing is for a charitable contribution. And so that's another thing people do. Sometimes they're a combination of cash and a charitable contribution. There's lots of different ways to do it.
I just want to say, Todd, I've been really happy with the fact that you're realistic in your forest practices. The folks that I call our environmentalists in the community seem to have a lot of respect for you and your company, and I feel that my hope for the watershed is that it stay pristine. If we log it, I want to make sure it's for the good of the forest, not for making a quick buck. If we do anything up there, fire management, whatever, again, to keep it pristine so that, again, I look at the value of the water we have in town and the fact that we're one of the only cities that has its own water source. And I don't really want to see people with ATVs up there. I don't want to see camping. I like the idea of guided tours because at least, but I also don't want to have to put porta potties up there and do that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
and I know Stephanie touched on that briefly. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that funding agencies are going to want to ask for is some public access. And I know that's going to be against some of the things. So one way to still provide some limited public access, if the public's going to put money up to do this, you could do docent-led tours at a limited time of the year when ground conditions are not such that we're going to start fires or we're going to cause erosion. That's a nice way to do it. You can put a cap on how many times a year, for how long a period of time they do it.
We've had trespassing up there and folks that aren't necessarily kind to the area, and so that's my biggest concern.
Yeah.
You know, people do all sorts of weird things in the forest around here, and they have rangers and that sort of thing, but it would just tax the police department more if we had to go up and do that more than we already do, and so.
I just thought of one other question. Would putting this land into a conservation easement make any projects like the slip out project in the future more difficult? Would there be extra?
No, I mean, so there's two kinds of conservation easements, generally. Depends on who crafts them. So there's a conservation easement that says, nothing is allowed unless explicitly described in here that you can do it. We don't want one of those. We want the kind of easement that says, you're allowed to do everything except these things expressly you cannot do. Road maintenance definitely is something we want to be able to do. You need to maintain the infrastructure up there. Like I said, forest management, we want to be able to do. But maybe what we want to limit is our ability to put 100 wind turbines up there or something. Or maybe it is something you want to do. I mean, that's a discussion. I don't know that yet, if that's in the future of the city or not, and that's the goal. But those are things that you could limit that somebody maybe would pay you to do. So,
Okay, thank you.
so our goal is to,
And I like
everything's
the idea
allowed
that-
except what we say you can't do.
And I like your idea that it'd be like a gatekeeper thing if you get up there and find out, yeah, there are all these possibilities, even though we don't want those possibilities, that it obviously adds more value to the property, in which case, moving forward is there. If we don't have that value, then we haven't spent that much.
Yeah.
So, any further discussion?
This kind of an easement, it would go on in perpetuity, and so whatever action was taken, if in fact the city granted a conservation easement there, that would bind future councils for forever, basically.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's something that, like I said, we're going to talk a lot about it and make, you're going to have a lot of time to decide you don't want to do it. You're going to have a lot of stuff to weigh there. It's not, we're, by no means is this committing us to a conservation easement. I hope ultimately that's where we get, but they are in perpetuity, and that's a long time. But if we write it correctly, and we're thinking about not just today, but in the future when we're setting this stuff up, and like I said, we have a lot of language in our existing easements that a lot of people have, we benefit from ones that didn't work as well, and people have new language that sort of is a little more flexibility. And then, I'm sorry to keep going on this, but a lot of specific stuff, like an easement will have, here are the purposes of this easement in some very big basic terms, but then you say, we're going to allow forest management per a forest management plan. And then every 10 years, we will create a new forest management plan, and we will update it based on the inventory and how the forest is growing and new technology, and it'll allow us to change things within that document to allow us to change practices. It's not like we have to predict today how you're going to manage that forest for 300 years. So you put those things that you want to have the ability to manipulate, road management plans, watershed management for what the city's going to do, water rights, any of those kinds, you put those into these side documents. You still allow the grantee the opportunity to review occasionally and approve, but you keep it flexible that way. What we lock in are the big ones, like we're never going to subdivide this property. It's pretty black and white.
never going to allow McMansions up there.
Yeah, whatever it is, you put those big things in there, and then you create these whole purposes, very clearly stated out in priority, so that future generations, if some issue was to come in front of a judge, the judge knew what the grantor and grantee was thinking, and this was our priority for putting this property in conservation easement, and here's the purpose of it. Right down by priority, and in this area, this was our purpose, and you make it really clear so that, because we're all gonna be gone, and somebody else is gonna be dealing with this, so.
All right.
I was going to move approval.
I was going to see if anybody from the public wants to say
Oh,
that. Does anybody from the public want to speak on this? All right, hearing silence. At this point, I'll bring it back up here.
I will move approval of staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, seconded by Mary. Any further discussion? All right, call for the vote.
Councilmember Kanne.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
No, because risk versus return on the projects that are in line with my represented vision, I can't.
I didn't
Strong.
understand that.
Councilmember Strong.
No. The reason, Madge asked me a question.
Could you
I'm sorry.
explain that again? I didn't quite get it.
Well, the risk versus return on projects that are in line. So we talked about conservatory. So when I think about that, I think about the risk versus what we could gain. And I don't feel like I'm willing to risk the public's fund for that. Now, if
got
I
it.
was looking at developing the property, then the risk versus return is low. And if that was in line with my vision, then I would vote
Okay, I
yes.
get
But
it.
because it's not, I voted no.
Okay, I vote yes.
Councilmember Stransky.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
All right. Department recommendations. Discussion possible adoption resolution amending adopted 2019-20 budget, in the amount of $81,500 and appropriate the Maple Street Pump Station project. You're on again.
Hello again. I came to you in August with Maple Pump Station plans and asked your permission to advertise to construct that project, and you gave permission. We advertised for the project shortly after that, and we received one bid that was over the budgeted amount for the project, and so we rejected the bid. And the plan at the time was to wait until the winter or early spring to put the project back out to bid, hoping to get more bidders and more competitive bids. After that time, shortly after that time, in September, there was an issue that happened up at the pump station. Some of you may already know about it. Some of you may not have had water, potentially for a short amount of time because of it. But essentially, the pump station went down for a short time. One of the main problems with the existing pump station is that it's just completely exposed to the elements, and it just really doesn't have a good foundation. And so we think that a leak that's happening at the pump station went into the electrical unit portion of the pump, and it burned out the motor. And so the pump had to be replaced. There was also an alarm that was checked, but it wasn't realized until the tank was empty for some reason that it was still having issues. So with that being said, the operators went out, changed the pump because we had an extra pump on hand, and now it's operational. But because of the circumstances, it makes us, with the winter ahead, feel more vulnerable with the pump station as it is. And so I went ahead and put it back out to bid, hoping to get some other interest. We again had one bidder second time around, same bidder with a slightly lower cost. And so that's what I'm presenting to you today to decide whether you'd like to move forward and go into contract with Summit Signal to begin the construction process for the pump station. And with that, we do need a budget amendment. Originally, I thought that the number for the budget amendment was going to be a lot lower. The fiscal year 18-19 budget actually had a discrepancy in it that was just caught when I went to write this agenda summary by June. The intention on one page of the budget, it said we had $100,000 budgeted for the project, but in actuality, the spreadsheet read $50,000. And so that typo was actually transferred onto the 19-20 budget. So just so you know, the intention, we thought we actually already had $100,000 budgeted for this project, but it turns out that we didn't, and so there lies the $81,500. Does anyone have any questions? I do want to add one more thing, sorry. Normally we ask for a 10% contingency on projects typically, but because this is a small project and because this is a project that we don't typically do a lot of, I've asked for a 15% contingency, and this is trying, partially, Larry, as an attempt to help you understand that this isn't kind of the norm project that we do. That kind of goes back to the slip out job of, I want you to know that this is, there's a little bit of uncertainty here, only because we don't typically do this type of project. So we have a lot of good numbers on underground street projects, storm drains, water lines, paving, that type of thing, but with smaller scale kind of projects like that, we don't have a lot of comps. So that's why I've asked for more contingency than normal.
Suzanne, can you explain where the funds are coming from this?
Yeah, these are coming from the water fund. So not general fund, not half-cent sales tax, street stuff. This is water fund. I don't know the exact number of the
Fund number?
The fund number's here, I just wanted you to explain.
Yeah, that it's definitely
Sometimes
all,
if you
it's
just have a fund
100%
number-
water. There's no splits or anything like
So-
that, but we have, from what I understand, a healthy reserve in the water fund for capital improvement projects. I don't know what that number is off the top
Yes,
of my head,
we
but
do.
I think it's healthy.
Madge has a question.
Yeah, I want to just clarify. Understand the typo,
Yeah,
so in the budget right now, it only listed as 50,000, and it was intended to be 100,000 estimated for this project. How come we are adding 81,500? Is it that the contract amount plus the 15% contingency? Is that why it's so?
Yes, yes.
Yeah?
yes.
Okay. So that 81,000 is added to the 50,000 that mistakenly was in the budget
Right.
to come up with this contract amount. Okay, so now I understand that. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable authorizing this because it's winter and we don't want to leave it the way it is. I guess it's could we get a better bid if we went out and
Yeah.
did it again? But I understand your concern is maybe we wouldn't make it all the way through the winter with the current situation.
Or we could potentially run into another problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of run risk either way. That's why I wanted to bring it to you guys to decide, knowing and having the information.
I think, yeah, particularly with the spring that you found, if it burned out another motor, we don't know how many more motors we may have to replace unless we sort of
Yeah.
fix it now.
That was like,
So the spring is what, it
Is it a
wasn't our
spring or
water
a leak?
Was it the
it's a,
leak or?
well,
Oh, was it?
the spring in the pipe, which is a leak.
Oh, okay. Thought we had
I
an
guess, but-
artesian well up there in addition.
It's a pipe,
Larry, did you
that's
have a question?
leaking.
Did you have a question?
No.
So, we could potentially wait, we don't know if we're gonna come back with better numbers or not. We could
Yeah.
come back with a higher number, I don't know. I've been in touch with the contractor from Summit Signal quite a bit, and we do plan to add language in the project specifications that if we do proceed with this, that we really want to see steps moving forward as much as possible, and the weather allows, to get construction up and going as soon as possible.
So if we built this, right now you had a pump sitting around
Right.
that you could plug in, but if that pump goes, we don't have a spare for that one.
We happen to actually have another spare because I have one ready for this pump house, but I don't think we want to spend our money that way.
No, I'm just
But we
curious.
do
just-
happen to have one.
All right, so, and
For
then
this
once
pump
this goes into place, what would happen to that pump? It would go back in the spare?
So the pump,
If we approve
the
this.
whole idea to begin with is that the pump that's operational right now is the second pump at the new pump house, and we have a new pump in the public works yard right now that would also be with that pump. So we have one in a box and we have one operational, and those two would come into the new pump house.
That's there.
So you'd have
That's
two pumps in
there.
the pump house.
Yes, that's one of the big benefits, other than a roof and a foundation.
There'd be that redundancy.
Yeah.
And you had a question?
So you just suggested that you would put language into the contract with Summit to try to encourage them to move on this as quickly as possible. Is there, however, a potential that, because of weather, because of their schedule, this actually wouldn't happen this fall, winter, in which case we're locked into a bid that potentially could be lower if we waited to get more bids later?
Yeah. It's, flip a coin, I don't know, I mean, it's,
It's what we do.
So,
I think that there's a good chance to make some progress on it, I do. But I can't guarantee that, obviously.
Larry has a question.
It's too bad that the majority of you didn't go up and look at this. I'm sure Sabrina and I have,
I look at it firsthand.
and
Yeah.
are, I just can't imagine not doing it, I'll just put it that way.
Yeah,
It definitely looks like a Band-Aid operation right now. I would like to see something a little more certain.
did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, Larry told me about it and I took my dog for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's so crazy of a price. I mean, it's a pretty small job relative to a lot of the other
Is
things
that why we
that we
probably only got
do.
one bidder?
Maybe, I mean, it's also been construction season, so people are just
Okay.
busy, but it's also small. So some people aren't interested for that reason. And it has a lot of different types of components. It's got a building component, it's got a grading component, it's got plumbing components, it's got electrical stuff going on. So not everyone wants to work with all of those things.
Hey, and Summit's local, right?
We know where to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about a small project is that contractors can fit small projects into their schedule and also into a weather schedule. So I'm hoping that the probability is low that it would have to wait.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's likely that the weather might get so bad at some point that there might be a delay, but I think that administrative process of actually getting a contract underway, getting some ground broken is gonna help speed it up. And even though there might be some weather delay, it's probably gonna get built quicker than if we decided to wait. So there is that, more surety there.
Any other questions up here? Anybody from the public that would like to ask anything? Guess I'll bring it back up here. Kathy. Oh, I need a motion. Sorry, I apologize.
I'll move.
Moved by Larry. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion second. Any further discussion? Not a call for the vote.
Councilmember Kanne,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Abstain, since my property borders it.
Strong,
Yes.
Stransky,
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yep. All right. All right, so now discussion possible action or adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to approve construction change orders up to a cumulative total of 20% and total contract amount for the Pine Street and vicinity utility project. Project number 2019-05, PW010, and to authorize city manager to execute a contract amendment with Argonaut Constructors.
Oh, no, that's Jeremy.
So, we went over on this one too. But it was, it's similar to the previous project we talked about. It was a really low bid. We're still well under budget. It was, we could have easily stayed within our 10% contingency and put a Band-Aid fix on the Spruce Street section that we added to pave. But we had an opportunity to pave that at a good price and fix it right, so that's what we decided to do. I feel like that was, I just feel like it was the right thing to do. I wouldn't have done it a different way. I mean,
And the orange bird,
what's that?
and the orange bird.
Yeah, I mean, so the sewer was, it was $26,000 on a $933,000 contract. I mean, that's stuff that you find. It's, I forget what those were, $4,000 each to fix approximately.
Sewer laterals.
It costs us $4,000 to go out and dig them up and see, what they're made out of. I mean, you wait until construction to see what that is. You kind of have built-in little change orders like that on every project that you do, so that didn't shock us at all. And there's no way we're gonna pave over Orangeburg laterals, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, it's like tar paper. I mean, you can just crush it with your hands. So that wasn't an option to not fix those, for sure.
Terry. I would like to commend you and Andrea on all of the time and energy that you guys have put into this, because I think it was really a nice job, and I know that I, over the last couple of years, have crabbed about the way that it is, but the water pipe is 70 years old that comes down Spruce Street. And I mean, it's probably had so many Band-Aids on it, that there were Band-Aids on the Band-Aids. I mean, it's been terrible. And they fixed it, and it's wonderful, and I gave Scott a bad time about the bad water here and home and wherever he was, and I finally told him about a month ago that it was nice, clear water, and I wanted to thank him. And I just think, well, I'm gonna vote for it, so that doesn't make any difference. I just think that they really did a nice job. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions? I just want to, same thing, compliment you guys and Argonaut, because I'll tell you, I got raving reviews from a lot of the residents up there.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't like moving cars or whatever, they said they were super nice.
Yeah.
And they were accommodating as far as getting residents in and out. Me and my dog walked through there a couple times, and I stopped to chat with some of the folks, and I heard nothing but good. And actually, with some of the folks, I took the time to kind of explain to them that, our discussion earlier, that we find crummy pipe and we got to fix it. While we were there to do one thing, we ended up doing others. And
Yeah.
I referred any questions to you guys, and because I'm just the guy walking the dog that pays the bills later on. So,
Yeah.
but again, I commend your staff and the contractors for a job well done.
Thanks, yeah, no, it was like the least complaints I've got on any project. The contractor really did a good job of,
Yeah, I also had to
dealing
explain to
with the
some
public.
folks who got some new sidewalk that I said, Well, you're getting it because it was part of our project, and because of, we try to do ADA stuff when we can, and so it's not like the folks that aren't getting a new sidewalk, I said, well, you better hope a pipe or we end up down there, but I said, that's just the way it goes. It's not because we're singling people out for special treatment, we're just trying to do it right when we hit a street.
Yeah, well, and in some cases, we're required to update our corner ramps if
Yeah.
we're going to pave a street. We don't have to put them in where they don't exist, but if there's a substandard one, we have to put that in. So they get added for that reason a lot too.
Larry?
I want to say also, the only councilman that was on the job on this streets that we did not get new curb and gutter. Everybody else got new curb and gutter and sidewalk. And he did not,
Whoever that is.
whoever that was.
I also wanted to explain, I know that we had a 10% contingency on this, and I know you folks are interested in contingencies. We are proud of the fact that we try to keep 10% contingencies in our projects, and a lot of cities would make it higher, especially in when you have unknowns. And I think this is a really good fiscal practice that we do here. And sometimes we have these change orders that have to be made, and we can't wait to come to council for them because the ground's open, the Orangeburg's there. It has to be we have to decide now, and which is why sometimes we have to come in after the fact, and we don't like to, but it is absolutely unavoidable. And so I just wanted to say that, but we do keep that at a very minimum. And it also keeps the contractors very aware that their contingency is low. And I think that once other cities have, 30% contingencies, contractors feel that they have more leeway, and we don't do that here. So I just wanted to make a plug for good practices of our engineering department. I appreciate that.
Yeah, okay. So we talked a lot about.
We talked a lot about
We knew we were gonna blow the contingency by paving that street, but we just, without calling like a special meeting or something, like we just had to make a
Right then,
decision.
We had to do
And, and I mean, it got really beat up during construction. I mean, we had to do something with it, and it just, was the right thing to do to pave it. But also, 10% is fine on these $1 million jobs, but really, like, on the slip-out job, on a $50,000 job, I mean, we should have a 25% contingency on those. I mean, you can spend $10,000 or $20,000 on a construction crew really quickly. I mean, it doesn't take much of a miscalculation to spend that much money with, the prices of the equipment and the labor. So it's something that we should be asking for on our smaller projects, is a bigger contingency, and we intend to, like she had 15 before, that's much more common. A 10% contingency on a really small job nobody does that,
Since we've been approving projects all night, it seems like, or change orders or whatever. Is there anybody from the public that would like to ask any questions on this? Otherwise, I'm going to bring it back up here. All right. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve staff recommendation?
Second? Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Anybody else? Any further discussion? All right, call for the vote.
Councilmember Kanne? Yes. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right. We are now at City Council Committee Boards Agency Reports. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. There is a meeting of the Mendocino Solid Waste Management Board tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, right here. And and then I'm not sure when the next EDFC meeting is. I don't think it's coming up, so that's it.
Ladies?
MTA doesn't meet again until December 11th, I believe.
Reinvited was canceled yesterday to be rescheduled.
Has the museum met at all lately? Or?
No.
Okay. Larry, you got anything?
Yes.
All right.
I went to a Measure B meeting today, and it was the most popular meeting that I've ever seen for this particular thing, for the mental health There were people from the community, from the Willits community, that got up and talked to the committee, and they tried to tell things that they thought, and I think that that's really good if we get the community involved. And it was really a good meeting. The things that have interested me is watching this group work for the last year and a half. Jerry and I go to this on one day a month, every month, and the project manager has started out at $80,000 in it with fringe benefits and everything. Now they're advertising it with all the benefits and everything at $150,000. And it's $100,000 and $50,000 for all the benefits. We had people that wanted to talk about the mental health, and one of the things that has been the real sticker for a lot of people that is in the community is if we have the PUF unit, which is the people that are violent that would come to this, maybe not just from Mendocino County, but it's open to what other counties would bring somebody. And then two negative things that I have seen that has happened is that there is no provision in anything that has been printed that let's say Butte County brings somebody over and they do all of their time they're supposed to and all the examinations and everything. There's nothing in the thing that's saying that they will come and pick this person back up. So we don't know where it would go. It would fall on our police department or whatever. The second thing was the 18-foot fence around it because of this PUF unit to keep them housed was a real stigma that bothered me. To drive into town and you don't get very far in town and you come across a building that has an 18-foot fence around it. And that would kind of tell me, you know, that's the way it is. The people that got up and talked from Willits said that they would not want this unit in it, but the public health for the immediate service and that type of thing is where they wanted to stay. Anyhow, the people that talked were Bill Barksdale and Amy Good and Emmy Good, excuse me, and Beth Rydell, and there were other people. There was about 4 or 5 people from Willits that got up and spoke about it. And the one thing I think that we need to know is that if the building would come to Willits, that this building is a 95-year-old building. And I don't know how many times that it has been remodeled, but it's going to take a lot of work, more work than the people think it's going to take. It's going to take more people to do it than what they have expected, in my estimation. Another thing is that it's going to fall on the people of Willits. It's not going to fall on the county. The county is going to okay it. They're going to build it, and then whatever happens is going to be up to the city of Willits, because they're not going to pay for extra people that we're going to need to make sure it works. The way it's written is that 75% of the money that was voted for this facility is for building the facility, and 25% of the money is going to be for maintaining it and the personnel that runs it. And I was amazed at the reports that how much money that the psychiatrists are going to take to when we house this, to have these people here. And I think, and also, can't think of his name, the doctor that just retired. What?
Matson.
Matson, yeah, is has mentioned several times that it's not going to be enough money that the people have voted to just maintain it and to run the people through it that is going to have to run through it. It just has a lot of questions that people really need to check. And the thing that was interesting is the people that came and said what they said, which is their right to say, have never been to a meeting before. It was just, they came, they had a little meeting and came as a group and talked out into the community. And I just think that people ought to really be aware of what goes on and how much time it takes for this group to get together and work out all the bugs and whatever that they have. And it was just really a good meeting, one of the best ones that we've had in a long time. My next thing that I wanted to say is, last meeting, I could not think of the name of the place that we did for MCOG, and it was Magalia. And so I want you to know in TV land that I didn't forget, that I searched it out and it was Magalia, and I've never been there. And Virginia and I are going to go there. Thank you.
I also want to thank Larry I could not attend today at the last minute. I had an appliance issue that I had to wait around for. Probably this is probably one of the better meetings. All along I've said, I really hope the Measure B committee decides to take their show on the road and get input from residents of the city so that people here that can't travel down there and watch the fireworks, I guess, that they should.
One other thing, the next meeting for this group is going to be December 12th or the 15th. Next time we have a meeting, I will have the exact time, but it will be in Willits, and it will be in this
okay.
building.
Well, good,
Okay.
because that's been kind of my gripes, is that
For free. That's what they said.
So I think that the people of Willits deserve to have a chance to weigh in. I haven't seen a project yet, none of us have, finished project or final project to see what it's going to entail. We've heard fences at one point, no fences. We've heard all sorts of things, and I think I've had people say, you guys better vote for this, and I'm thinking, well, I want to know what I'm voting for. I can't vote for something I don't know and what it's going to entail and what impacts it's going to have to the community. I have those concerns because our budget is a little stressed right now, and whether it be fire, police, or any other city services, are we going to be able to recoup our costs? And one point or another, I'll be looking at Jim to tell us what we can or can't do. And at one point, I would like to see it come before our planning commission, at least to give the residents of Willits a chance to speak on it. So, Mitch.
I'm not sure exactly where it is in the process, but I understood that there was going to be a contract brought to the Board of Soups to do, I guess, feasibility fiscal analysis of options of location and construction, obstacles or whatever on all three of the priority kinds of facilities that they're looking at. Is that, and that obviously has to precede any attempt to define the project.
Yeah, I think they're still trying to hire the project manager.
They're still trying,
So-
that was what I just said about
But I think, wasn't there going to be a feasibility study in addition to having a
There
project
is,
manager?
but there has been a real push from one or two people on this board to bring it up to Willits, and yeah, they're still looking.
But that they're bringing is still just another committee meeting. They're not talking specifically about a
No,
project here.
No, they have not
Yeah.
selected one place.
Right, so
And,
that's lots of things to still be decided.
Yeah, and they really need to start looking into the actual amount that it would cost them to build to refurbish the hospital to make it a reality for this place.
I'm trying to remember what meeting I was at, but people were saying that considering when Measure B passed, it seems kind of surprising that they're still at the point of starting an analysis of where the different sites might be for the 3 facilities that they've had. It just seems,
My opinion, Madge, is that there were some folks connected with this that had already made up their mind, and then the process has taken them to the point of maybe we should do an analysis.
yeah.
And so the cart was before the horse, and now the cart's been shoved back because I think in the interest of transparency and open meetings, now they have to actually study it and.
I agree with that direction. It's surprising it took so long to get there, because that just seems like so much common sense that they've identified the facilities, the kind of facilities they need. They should look at, do we want them in Ukiah, Willits, Fort Bragg, Covell? Where do we want them? Which of the 3 should go where? Should there be some dispersed facilities instead of having it all in one place? And, until they've done that, it's really premature to start asking even whether there's going to be a fence or not.
Jerry, is the Kemper report available for the public? to
Yes,
read?
it should be. I think
It's
it's on,
online.
yeah.
Where online?
I believe.
In the Measure B
I
area?
think there's some.
No, they've taken it off and they're gonna put it back on again.
Yeah, because it was there and it
I was
disappeared.
at the Hascheck Town Hall last week, and there was a
That's-
lot of discussion
that's
about
where it
this. And
was.
I was really disappointed and surprised that so many of the people speaking vociferously about it hadn't even read the Kemper report. And there's some great information in it about what the recommendations are and what the Measure B committee is actually considering. So I would encourage anyone in the public who's interested in this issue to read the Kemper report. It's fascinating, and it will help you be a more informed citizen.
Each of us council members prior to you received a copy as well.
Yeah.
It's not anything you sit down by the
There's
fire and tiptoe and read either. It's tough reading.
Yeah.
The council also, gosh, when I first came on board, this was an issue, and I remember a former council member said, you should go to this meeting, and I did with the police chief. And I was sort of shocked because it was being fast-tracked. And it was said, we're going to fast-track this and make it happen. And I had seen cost estimates and all this, and having come from a construction background, I found great issue with the construction estimates. And so they've taken a step back, but it's, there's a lot of information, so the council considered this. We do have some information that the council looked at and some memos that Jim wrote, and I'm not sure, whether, if that's, that is something that is searchable on our website. We did pass a resolution regarding this, regarding information. Jim also wrote a memo regarding sort of our rights and
We
responsibilities.
made a records request.
And
Right.
we did a records request.
And we
so-
received hundreds of pages of emails and
Hundreds.
other documents.
Hundreds of pages.
Oh, and apparently I erred, Kathy corrected me, apparently there's still department recommendations I skipped, I'm assuming.
Oh, there's that, but I'm sorry, I wanted to say, I believe that meeting is going to be December 18th,
December 18th.
Wednesday, December 18th, that's what I have on my calendar.
And that's the same day as the council meeting? Is that the same day as the council meeting?
Council meeting is on the 11th, so it's the following Wednesday.
Okay, so I'm sorry to digress, but Chief and Chief, do you guys have anything?
Mayor, Councilmembers, Chris Wilkes, Fire Chief with the Willits Fire District. Real quick, I just wanted to touch on the EMS function in our county, in our area. There have been some really good articles in local news on it that have been really accurate. As you may know, Vera Health Ambulance have they pulled out of Mendocino County as of December 1st. So what you know is your local ambulance here in Willits is no longer there, and the writing's been on the wall for that for a while, so it's finally coming down. However, I do have to say that it's certainly raised awareness within local providers, and everybody is working hard right now to come up with a solution. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but MedStar, who's the ambulance service that will remain in the county, they're working hard on their administrative end to try to put together something that's going to work for us in the central corridor. To say that it's going to be perfect, it's not going to happen. To say that we're still going to have an ambulance service here that hopefully we can get the job done, yes. Is our fire department going to be impacted heavily? with the burden of medical aid calls that we don't normally respond to. It's a huge issue. Well, obviously, there's been discussion about in the county with sales tax and that sort of thing, and those kind of discussions are still happening. But the reality is, I just wanted to talk about boots on the ground, you know, getting people to definitive care from when they call 911, and that it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt for a little bit as of December 1st. And there's some other opportunities out there that we're working on, but they haven't been figured out yet. But it's certainly something that I feel like council should know, and we're still trying to mitigate it. But it has brought forth some really good discussion in our Ukiah, or what used to be called the Ukiah Providers Group, but it's just the providers group. It has all the ambulance services, REACH, CalSTAR, our local LIMSA, and certainly fire departments in those meetings. And second of all, I wanted to thank for our Excise Tax Committee. I wanted to thank the mayor and Mr. Stransky for attending our tour of one of the local cannabis facilities. I think, and Stephanie, thank you. It was worthwhile, and I hope that we got a lot out of that as we went through there. And unless you have questions for me, that's the end of my report.
I'd like to go on a tour when there's an
Oh, I'd love to
opportunity.
with you, sure.
Well, yeah. We can arrange that. We arrange this tour and we can
Yeah,
arrange.
Michelle arranged it, so I think we decided that those of you who wanted to go on these tours would be a good idea. We obviously couldn't, me and Larry went as the committee, but the,
Okay. Yeah, we couldn't have three at once.
yeah.
I know.
So the idea was that the rest of you, if you wanted to, could avail yourself.
I know they're anxious to show off their hard work, so we'll make sure that there's an opportunity for the other council members to go to some of these facilities and conduct.
And Chris, I know that you guys are on pins and needles with these red flag days, and do you have anybody out on the strike force right
We
now?
do. Right now, we have our deputy chief, John Toman's out as the strike team leader. Actually, it's called the task force leader with one of our engines over in Lake County right now as we speak. And so, you know, it's preparatory, but they actually were working a structure fire locally in Lake County yesterday. So they are being utilized, and so it's been worthwhile to have them pre-positioned. It's an OES pre-position. It's paid for through the Office of Emergency Services, and so far that's been beneficial to them. As we get red flag warnings in our county, and if we can meet the criteria of their scoring criteria for OES, we might see some of those strike teams also in our county. But we don't quite meet the scoring criteria at the same time that Lake County, they get it, especially on the eastern side of the lake. They get that before we do.
Thank you, sir. Oh,
Could you clarify, are we no longer going to have an ambulance located in Willits after December 1st?
We're working on keeping an ambulance here, but I can tell you that Vera Health Ambulance as of December 1st will no longer be operating in Mendocino County. And that is who we know as our local ambulance.
So Falk.
Falk, correct. Yeah, Falk. They came in as Vera Health. I've always called them that, but
I'm a little upset, Chris, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, that kind of felt like Vera Health chased out MedStar, and, you know, now we're,
you'd be exactly correct of how that happened.
and I'm a little upset that the LIMSA let that happen.
Well, it has to do with the way ambulance service is provided in Mendocino County. It's done by permit, it's not done by contract. So when it's done by permit, it's for-profit agencies, and they have to meet the minimum requirements of their permit, and they're in their legal right to do that. It's
I
unfortunate.
figure it's the market, but boy, it's like trusting your safety to the sharks in the water there, so to speak.
There's absolutely nothing right now that would keep another competitor from coming in and doing exactly the same thing again.
So,
There are no safeguards for that.
At the conference, I did talk to an ambulance company who was disappointed that the RFP had been withdrawn because they had bid on it.
Yeah. We had, you know, there was a bid on the RFP, and to be transparent, the bid was not accepted by the county. Of course, they didn't pay the money that the county wanted as part of the RFP, so I would venture to guess that that was probably part of the reason why their RFP wasn't accepted or considered.
Was it AMO?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I talked to
well, thank you, Chris. Police chief, do you have anything? Dusty? Kathy? Kathy?
Nothing this
Jim?
evening.
Last week, while Stephanie was in Nashville, I was at the League of California Cities annual conference in Long Beach, and I attended some general sessions and all of these city attorney sessions. I was in Los Angeles anyway, so I was able to attend that without transportation or lodging expense, and it was a very good conference.
I got some email highlights from it, so.
So,
Actually, that, bring it back up here, 'cause, League of Cities, and I'm going to send it to Kathy, but one of the things I passed on, not so much for us, it seemed like it, but maybe for, over in Lake County, there was issues with the whole, who got to speak on the phone and who didn't with OES and on these PSPs, and I did bring that up to our rep, that there was some, the cities were feeling a little less loved than the counties, and we have as much at stake at the table, these for our residents. And so apparently there was a, no, you can't be on there, yes, you can, but you can't talk, et cetera.
You can't talk.
Apparently the press can be on there, but they can't ask questions, so.
Yeah, and at one point, the county asked, well, what about Willits? What's happening with Willits? And they were spoken to sharply, you should ask your county representative. And the person responded, I am the county. And that was pretty funny.
So, but I know I brought it up with our league rep, and they apparently are now sending out information on the PSP stuff that as it comes out. So I'll send out to Kathy, she can distribute it to you guys so you get an idea.
Yeah, through so we're talking to the county, they talk to us.
Yeah, yeah, so the league apparently decided to advocate for the cities at these things with the governor's office and stuff. And so I'm happy that the league decided to kind of let, I guess, wave a saber around and let them know that the governor's office know that. And apparently they got an earful from somebody that knows somebody over in Lake County too. Apparently Gavin has friends over there. So, so I guess at this point, do we have any good and welfare or any other council member reports and recommendations?
I have one.
Go ahead.
We had a Willits community bike ride in a recent prior month that was successfully attended and sponsored by NCO Walk and Bike Mendocino, Public Health, and the City of Willits. And there was an interest in continuing that. So the next community bike ride is on Thursday, November 7th, 4 p.m. They'll be meeting at Rec Grove. And there's already one planned again for December. So the goal is to have one a month. So meet at Rec Grove on Thursday the 7th at 4 if you'd like to join us.
Bring a helmet?
Wear a helmet.
When's,
Don't ride on the sidewalk.
is there a date for December also? Is there
The December date is still tentative, but November 7th then.
okay.
All right. So unless there's any good and welfare, we have a closed session for tonight.
And
Do you have a good road?
I just want to remind folks about the retreat on Monday. Starts at 10 o'clock
And it will be,
here in City Hall.
okay,
And we're taking lunch orders. We're going to Subway and picking y'all up a sandwich, so if you would let us know.
If you could give those to Stephanie in closed session tonight, what you'd like.
What you'd like for Subway on
appreciate
Monday.
Subway, no, from our
Subway's cheaper. No,
I'm going to bring my own.
that's fine too. If you want to bring a sack lunch, that's fine. If you have another suggestion, that's fine too. We thought about pizza, but
I thought we usually went to, what's it called?
we're spreading the love around. We're spreading the love around.
I like it.
all right. Anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, we have a closed session conference with labor negotiators pursuant Government Code 54957.6, agency negotiator, our city manager, the employee organization, police department. And we'll report out if there's anything to report out.